I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Hey guys, no commercials this episode. This is a very special episode celebrating Memorial Day. This episode is with Leroy Arthur Petry, who is a decorated Army Ranger from the 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. He retired as a Master Sergeant. Master Sergeant retired Petry was awarded the Medal of Honor, the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, Combat Infantryman Badge, among others. Master Sergeant retired Petry was kind enough to chit-chat with me for the better part of an hour over the phone a few months ago. And this was before I had better equipment. So please forgive the quality. It is the content that is important in this episode. So please enjoy my conversation with a real living American hero. Enjoy, guys. Master Sergeant retired Leroy Petry.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
It was Abraham Lincoln that stated that a nation that does not honor its heroes will not long endure. And that's exactly what we're here to do today, to honor an American hero, Master Sergeant Leroy Petry. Our society places the wrong people on a pedestal. Too often American society believes a hero is someone who can catch a football for $24 million, someone who can sing a song better than the next, or someone who pretends to be someone else in a fictional television script. Those aren't heroes. One can only look at the man sitting before you today to see a true American hero. A man of courage, honor, character, and the first to tell you, not without faults. Heroes are not born. They don't come from a certain class of society. They're not given special training to make them a hero. I believe the actions of a hero come from the heart. Let me tell you a little bit about the hero I know, Master Sergeant Leroy Petry.
Master Sergeant Petry's professional military education includes the Airborne Course, Combat Lifesaver Course, U.S. Army Ranger Course, Warrior Leaders Course, Jump Master Course, Advanced Leaders Course, Senior Leaders Course, and Combatives Level 1 Course. He has earned the Ranger Tab, Combat Infantryman's Badge, Expert Infantryman's Badge, Basic and Senior Parachutist Badges, and Canadian Parachutist Badge. His awards and decorations include the Medal of Honor, the Bronze Star Medal with Oak Leaf Cluster, Purple Heart, Army Commendation Medal with 2 Oak Leaf Clusters, Army Achievement Medal with Oak Leaf Cluster, Army Good Conduct Medal, 3rd Award, National Defense Service Medal, Afghanistan Campaign Medal with Combat Star, Iraq Campaign Medal with Combat Star, Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, NCO Professional Development Ribbon numeral 3, Overseas Service Ribbon, and the Valorous Unit Award.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the White House as we present our nation's highest military decoration, the Medal of Honor, to an extraordinary American soldier, Sergeant First Class Leroy Petry. This is a historic occasion. Today is only the second time during the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Indeed, only the second time since Viet Nam that a recipient of the Medal of Honor from an ongoing conflict has been able to accept this medal in person. Leroy, the Medal of Honor reflects the deepest gratitude of our entire nation. I want to take you back to the circumstances that led to this day. It's May 26, 2008, in the remote east of Afghanistan, near the mountainous border of Pakistan. Helicopters carrying dozens of elite Army Rangers race over the rugged landscape. And their target is an insurgent compound. The mission is high risk. It's broad daylight. The insurgents are heavily armed. But it's considered a risk worth taking because intelligence indicates that a top al-Qaeda commander is in that compound. The helicopters touch down, and our Rangers immediately come under fire. Within minutes, Leroy, then a staff sergeant, and another soldier are pushing ahead into a courtyard surrounded by high mud walls. And that's when the enemy opens up with their AK-47s. Leroy is hit in both legs. He's bleeding badly, but he summons the strength to lead the other Ranger to cover behind a chicken coop. He radios for support. He hurls a grenade at the enemy, giving cover to a third Ranger who rushes to their aid. An enemy grenade explodes nearby, wounding Leroy's 2 comrades. And then a second grenade lands. this time only a few feet away. Now, every human impulse would tell someone to turn away. Every soldier is trained to seek cover. That's what Sergeant Leroy Petry could have done. Instead, this wounded Ranger, this 28-year-old man with his whole life ahead of him, this husband and father of 4, did something extraordinary. He lunged forward toward the live grenade. He picked it up. He cocked his arm to throw it back. And what compels such courage? What leads a person to risk everything so that others might live? For answers, we don't need to look far. The roots of Leroy's valor are all around us. We see it in the sense of duty instilled by his family, who joins us today. His father, Larry, his mother, Lorella, his 4 brothers. We see it in the loyalty of an Army Ranger who lives by a creed, "Never shall I fail my comrades," or as Leroy puts it, "These are my brothers, family, just like my wife and kids, and you protect the ones you love." And that's what he did that day, when he picked up that grenade and threw it back just as it exploded. With that selfless act, Leroy saved his 2 Ranger brothers, and they are with us today. This valor came with a price. The force of the blast took Leroy's right hand. Shrapnel riddled his body. Said one of his teammates, "I had never seen someone hurt so bad." So even his fellow Rangers were amazed at what Leroy did next. Despite his grievous wounds, he remained calm. He actually put on his own tourniquet, and he continued to lead, directing his team, giving orders, even telling the medics how to treat his wounds. When the fight was won, as he lay in a stretcher being loaded onto a helicopter, one of his teammates came up to shake the hand that Leroy had left. That was the first time I shook the hand of someone who I considered to be a true American hero, that Ranger said. Leroy Petry showed that true heroes still exist and that they're closer than you think. And that Ranger's right. Leroy lost a hand, and those wounds in his legs sometimes make it hard for him to stand, but he pushes on and even joined his fellow Rangers for a grueling 20-mile march. He could have focused only on his own recovery, but today he helps care for other wounded warriors, inspiring them with his example. Given his wounds, he could have retired from the Army with honor, but he chose to re-enlist indefinitely. In this past year, he returned to Afghanistan, his 8th deployment, back with his Ranger brothers on another mission to keep our country safe. This is the stuff of which heroes are made. This is the strength, the devotion that makes our troops the pride of every American. And this is the reason that, like a soldier named Leroy Petry, America doesn't simply endure, we emerge from our trials stronger, more confident, with our eyes fixed on the future. Our heroes are all around us, and as we prepare for the reading of the citation, please join me in saluting one of those heroes, Leroy Petry.
Ladies and gentlemen, the guest of honor, Master Sergeant Retired Leroy A. Petry.
I am so excited to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking this time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
I would like to welcome you to the show. I'm going to go ahead and introduce you now, if that's cool.
Okay.
I would like to welcome to the show Master Sergeant Retired Leroy Petry. Mr. Petry, welcome to the Fascination Street.
Thank you. It's actually pronounced Petry, like the dish.
You know, that's funny because that was going to be my first question because I have heard it both ways. I think they even said it both ways during your retirement ceremony.
Yeah, it's spelled like Petry, but it's pronounced like Petry.
Gotcha. Well, from now on, I will refer to you as Petry.
You ever see that movie Land Before Time? The little pterodactyl is named Petry.
Yes. My son loved that movie. I think there was a little bit of racism in that movie. I think that like a brontosaurus or something said, "Flatheads have no brains."
Yeah.
So the way that this all came together was, I guess you were in San Antonio for some reason or another, and my wife was coming back from a flight out of town, and she ran into you at San Antonio Airport.
We were actually on the same flight. One of the prior sergeant majors of the Army was sitting in the same area as us, and when we were getting ready to leave the plane, we were stuck at the gate bridge, whatever it's called, and we're waiting for them to open the door. The sergeant major of the Army ended up telling everybody who I was, and your wife and I got to talking for a little bit while we waited for them to open the door, and I was like, well, he was a prior sergeant major of the Army. So I tried to shift fire on him.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
Not so well. He ran out the door, and I was like, "Oh, come on."
That's hilarious. Well, you gave my wife a challenge coin.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
so much. I have had this in my pocket pretty much ever since I got it. This is amazing.
It's a small token of thanks for the people that mean something and have done something for our country.
But you're that guy. You're the guy who did everything for this country.
Yeah, but that's the one thing I realized is it's good to recognize people for things they do. There's so much negativity in the media nowadays that I like to bring a little positive aspect to people's lives that are deserving.
You're not wrong. So, was this coin for my wife because she served?
Yeah, it's actually, I believe it or not, I hate to say it, and this has nothing to do with your family, but I've had several instances where I've given a coin to a couple. They end up separating, and that's the one thing they fight over. It sounds so silly, but you would be surprised. I've gotten calls that say, "Hey, my wife took my coin or my husband took my coin. Can I get another one from you?" Like, oh, man.
That's hilarious. My wife led me to believe that you gave this to her to give to me, but in fact, you gave this to her. Now we're going to have to get a divorce.
No, don't get a divorce. You guys can share it.
Nah, man, we're going to have to get a divorce. That way I keep it. So I did have a question. I did have a question. I'm looking at it here. It's absolutely beautiful, but on it is sort of like a sideways yellow diamond with the number 2 on it. Can you tell me why there's a 2?
It's an orange diamond, and what the 2 diamond represents is I put that on as a way to represent our history. If you've seen the movie Saving Private Ryan, on the back of their helmets, they have the orange 2 diamond on the back of their 2nd Rangers. And those were the Rangers of 2nd Ranger Battalion back during World War II that scaled the cliffs of Point du Hoc. And they were also Delta Company, the same company I was in when I got injured, which we had just activated a few years prior. And so it's a way to pay respect to the Rangers that went before me, as well as I put the Ranger tab and scroll on there to represent current day Rangers. And then on the outer ring, you'll see a star on the left side and a star on the right side. And what the blue star on the left side it represents is the families that have someone deployed, and the gold star on the right side is the one that represents those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice.
It is a work of art. Did you get to design this?
I did design the back myself. The front was designed by a lot of the Medal of Honor recipients use that as the front of their challenge coin, and it's just the Medal of Honor Foundation logo.
Well, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but if I were to pick a side, I would say that the side you designed is the front, not the back. It's gorgeous.
And that's what makes it unique, is that most of us have the same front, but what makes it unique is the back side, it's our interpretation of what was important to us to put on there.
Do you have to pay for these? Because I imagine you're giving them out all over the place.
I have at first I was, but now I have our Medal of Honor Society gives us a stipend each year for use, like paper, envelopes, kind of office stuff, and I choose to put all mine into coins. I think that's the most meaningful thing that is out there. And some of the guys will say, "Well, Leroy, you give out too many coins. You're going to devalue the coin." I said, my coins will never devalue because they mean the most to the people I give them to.
That's the truth. This is absolutely amazing. Okay, so enough about this really cool coin. Let's talk about you, man.
I've been out of the Army for almost coming up on 3.5 years. And I have been busier now than I was when I was active duty.
Really? Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. So first, I want to wholeheartedly thank you so very much for your service, for your sacrifice, for being a badass, and for having my country's flag on your uniform. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now, you are the 2nd living recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor since the Viet Nam War. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You also were awarded the Purple Heart, the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star, and a bunch of other awards. Now, this is going to sound like a really stupid question, but are you like the most decorated living veteran?
No, far, far away from that. I will say that there's a lot more people with far more medals than I have, but I never really cared about how many I had. It just, the value of each one and what it took to earn it is what made an impact on me. And believe it or not, most people outside of the military don't know what half the medals are to begin with, to include the Medal of Honor. A lot of people, civilians, are only knowledgeable on the Silver Star and the Purple Heart. Outside of that, it's the onesies and twosies here and there that recognize different medals. I mean, if you told people I have a Legion of Merit, most people are like, I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool.
Yeah, I got a feeling most people would be like, cool, is that from the Boy Scouts?
Yeah, I think those awards, like I said, that's where I learned that it means something to recognize people. And even though the recognition is not nationally or sometimes even publicly known, that recognition is needed, and it means a lot to the person that's being recognized.
Gotcha. Of all of those awards, which one is the rarest, like the least awarded? Would that be the Congressional Medal of Honor?
Yes. It's called the Medal of Honor. People call it the Congressional because it's awarded by Congress, but it's just known as the Medal of Honor. And there's only been 3,500 awarded in our nation's history, and of the 3,500, most of them were awarded posthumously, and out of the 3,500, there's 71 living recipients today. Of the 71, there's 11 of us under the age of 70.
Wow. Are all 11 of you since Vietnam, or how many since Vietnam?
All the 11 living are from Afghanistan.
Gotcha. And you were the second?
Yes.
Wow. Do you have to be nominated for that award?
The nomination starts at the lowest level, meaning usually the people that were there on the ground with you and saw the action and bear witness to it have to write sworn statements attesting to what they saw, and then it goes up the chain of command like any other award, and then it is scrutinized, and the process takes approximately 3 years just because at every level that it goes up to, it is scrutinized for errors, and at any level it can get bumped down to a lower award. And so it's a lengthy process, but it's lengthy for a reason. When it has to go across the desk of Congress and the United States President, it needs to be perfect.
That makes 100% sense. So you've told the story a million times of the events that led to you being nominated for this award. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to cut in President Obama explaining that. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Do you tell it better?
I could probably explain it in my quick version. All special operations one evening got alerted that a high-value target was moving in Afghanistan, that they had gotten some intel that he was moving in Afghanistan. And so they basically shut down all special operations and said, wherever you're at, stay put. Whoever's area of operations he pops up in, that's going to be the people that are going to action on it. And so normally, as Rangers, we sleep during the day or do our daily activities during the day and go out on operations during the nighttime. Well, that morning I was up early. I was going to check my email and do a few things in the office or a planning area, whatever it's called. Not really an office, but the tent with computers. And I went in there, and there was an officer that was on guard duty, I guess, monitoring everything. And he jumps up from the other side of the room at his computer, and he says, Leroy, go wake up the pilots, go wake everybody up. Hesitated for a split second, and then went and started waking people up, and went and woke up my guys and told them, start getting your gear ready, check your gear, I'll be back. And I ran to the chow tent. What I was going to do was I was going to grab some beef jerky packets, or what we call lickies and chewies, little things to stick in my day bag so that if we got stuck out, give those to the younger guys, and it helps boost their morale if we're stuck out there for a while. No chow. But I'm walking through this tent, and it's decorated like the 4th of July, red, white, and blue everywhere. And I can't really figure it out. And so I'm walking toward the end of the tent, and I see this sheet cake. And I walk over to the sheet cake, and on this cake it says, Happy Memorial Day. And I stopped for a second. I was like, wow, we had been doing so many operations almost nightly that I lost track of time, and I didn't realize that it was already Memorial Day. And so I took a brief second, and then I ran back to the planning bay. Immediately there, we were briefed on what was going on, started our hasty planning, and next thing we know, I'm back out checking my guys' gear, and then we're loading up on helicopters going out to the target. Immediately upon touching down, we realized it was, well, actually in the air, we realized it was a little bit different than normal missions because this was a daylight mission, and being a high value target, they usually have a better protection force with them that's willing to fight to the death. And so they're a little bit highly trained, and we knew we were going to get into, if they were there, we were going to get into a heavy firefight possibly. And so I'm going through all these different contingencies in my mind, what I'm going to do if we take a casualty, because our history has proven that we've taken casualties during daylight missions far often more than at nighttime, just because we have the element of surprise and the cover of darkness. And so the other thing one of my first sergeants said was, while we're flying in the helicopter, he said, normally you look across at the guys across from you and you see their faces under a green glow of our night vision. He said, now you can see the color and pigment of their skin, and you can see the expressions on their face. And he said it was definitely a different mission. We all had a little bit of butterflies. You could see it in everybody's face. And so as soon as our helicopter touched down, we started taking fire from a nearby field. Enemy fighter was shooting at us, and our platoon leader and I went and neutralized that threat. And as we were clearing weapons and stuff from him, we got a call over the radio that one of the younger squad leaders had gone into the wrong compound across the street. And so I told my platoon leader, I'm going to break off. I'm going to go with them and provide overwatch. And he says, go for it. So I run over there. At that point, they had already crossed the street, and they were entering a compound of about 9-foot walled compound, pretty big compound. And inside was this 2-story building and then a smaller 1-story, maybe 6-7 feet wide, probably about 10 feet long. And they started going across the courtyard and started clearing the 2-story building inside right away. I was the last man in, so as soon as they got to that doorway and they started flowing into that building, I stayed in the doorway and I said, give me another guy. We need to start clearing this courtyard and clear that other building. Immediately, I felt PFC Robinson bump my shoulder, and I knew I had another Ranger with me. So we started to move, and as we started to move, 2 guys popped up to our left, maybe 10, 15 feet away, and started spraying AK-47s from the hip. I caught him out of my peripheral vision as we were moving, and immediately I felt a strike, what felt like a sledgehammer to my left thigh. It impacted, and I kind of did a kick to the side like a deer when it gets shot, and immediately I knew I was hit, but I didn't know how bad I was hit. I thought, well, the bullet's probably just lodged in the bone and they could dig it out later. I immediately just ran to cover, got behind the smaller building. Robinson got hit just below his armpit on his left side, and he followed me behind cover. I immediately told him, watch that corner, start checking yourself for injuries. I got it on the radio. I prepped a grenade. I threw it over the building toward the enemy. It went off. Kind of bought us a lull in fire, which Sergeant Higgins ended up running to our position. And they were to my right. We had our backs toward the building, and we were watching the corners to our right and left. And I told him, check on Robinson, watch that corner. I kept watching the corner to my left and calling up on the radio, giving my command updates. At that point, my legs started to hurt a little bit, so I crouched down in a almost kneeling, crouching position. Next thing we know, we hear a blast. The 2 guys next to me kind of turn around and say, Petry, what the hell was that? And I said, they're throwing hand grenades. Keep your heads down. Keep watching those corners. My biggest fear was that they were going to come around the sides and finish us off. And so I keep watching my corner, keep checking on them, keep calling on the radio. Well, on one of the checks, when I looked back to my right to check on them, I noticed on the ground right behind them, we were no more than 2-3 feet away from each other. And there was a pineapple grenade sitting on the ground. Well, I knew we hadn't used pineapple grenades since Viet Nam probably, so I knew it wasn't one of our grenades. Immediately recognized it as a threat. Didn't really think about it besides get it away from them. Reached over, grabbed it with my right hand, leaned forward in an attempt to toss it away. And as I raised my head back up and sat back up, pulled back my right arm, and the hand was completely gone at the wrist, like somebody had taken a circular saw and just cut it right off. Grabbed my forearm with my left hand, started to pinch it as tight as I could. I looked at the wound. The radius and the ulna were poking up maybe a half of an inch. The blood was oozing pretty profusely, and there was a meat skirt, so to speak. The skin was flapped back a little bit around all the edges, but the hand was completely gone, and I could see the dirt and the debris and smell some of the burn. It was kind of unreal, but this is what went through my head as I'm looking at this thing going, man, how come this thing isn't spraying 3 feet in the air like in Hollywood? And so I finally snapped back to reality that I got to take care of this. And reached over on my kit, grabbed a tourniquet, wrapped it on my forearm, tied it down as tight as I could, stopped it from bleeding, checked on my two guys next to me who basically got minor shrapnel, got back on the radio, let my command know what was going on, told my guys, keep watching those corners, watching mine. Next thing we know, we see one of our first sergeants coming up, running toward me, and he reaches down and he grabs me by my kit in an attempt to pull me up, and he says, come on, we're going to get you out of here. And I kind of pushed his arm away, and I said, you're not taking me anywhere till you kill those SOBs behind the building. And he looks at me, and he saw that I was coherent, that I already started self-aid, and he said, okay, we'll come back for you. And he ran off in the distance, and I think to grab some other guys to try to flank them. At that point, the firing from the enemy stopped. We had another lull in fire. I don't know if they were running low on ammo or what, but I was able to grab onto another guy, and we ended up running over to where our medics were. And we get in there, and there's blood everywhere, and they're treating guys to my right and to my left. And one of our docs comes running up to me, and he says, hey, Sergeant Petry, we need to treat you. And I said, no, I'm fine. I already got a tourniquet on here. Help those guys. And he says, well, we need to look at your legs. At that point, I had already completely forgot about my legs, and I looked down, and my pants are covered from my thighs down to my boots in blood. Mentally, I didn't want to leave the fight. I thought that if I could control a radio or provide overwatch, anything I could do would be supportive. And then I realized that even though I was in it mentally, that the body needs juice to run, and I had lost a lot of it. So I sat down, and I told them, okay, go ahead, take a look. And at that point, they cut my pants off and realized that I had been shot through both my thighs, and they started putting tourniquets on my legs and packaging me up in attempt to medevac me. And once they secured a helicopter landing zone nearby, they started to move me, and as they're moving me, guys carried me up this little hill, and I'm looking off on the top of the building, the two-story building that was in the compound. I see some of our guys up there with their guns pulling security, and another guy comes running up to the litter that I'm being carried on, and he goes, hey, Sergeant Petry, you're going to be all right. You're going to be all right. And I'm looking at him. I was like, get the heck away from me. I was like, go pull security, because at that point, I'm still in the leader mode, and I'm thinking, either you're going to get shot coming to comfort me, or I'm going to get shot in this litter where I can't even defend myself. So they get us to the helicopter. They load us on the helicopter. And one of the last things that happened before we left the battlefield was Sergeant Higgins came running up the ramp next to me, and he knelt down next to me, and he said, you saved us, you saved us. And got on the helicopter, and we flew out to an airfield nearby, and they basically unloaded us, put us on the side of this dirt airfield, and the helicopter took off back to support the mission. And I had two PAs from my unit that were there working on all of us. And I couldn't see really what was going on because I was laid down, tied to the litter. But they took care of us until about 30 minutes later. A fixed-wing aircraft, a plane called the J. Mount Bird that has medical facilities able to do basically surgeries on board, picked us up and took us to Bagram. About midway through flight, I lost consciousness due to, I guess, the meds, drugs that they put me on. And I forget what they call it, but they basically sedated me. And next thing I knew, I woke up in Germany the next morning. I guess I had gone to Bagram. They did a wound wash out there and then flew me out to Germany. And I woke up in Germany, and that was kind of crazy what went through my mind there. But I woke up and arm was all bandaged, and the first thing I asked the nurse for was a razor and some shaving cream. And she looked at me crazy, and what was going through my mind was, man, how many days was I out? I must be pretty scruffy, because I felt my face. Probably by then it was like the next day shadow, not the 5 o'clock shadow. And part of our Ranger standard was Ranger will always be clean shaven. And so I didn't know who was going to come into my hospital room, whether it be a general, a colonel, or what. And so I needed to shave. That's what was going through my mind. I got my shave, and that was the first time I was able to call home. And I knew that our rear detachment had called, or had already gone by the house and told my wife and kids. My mother-in-law was here at the time, and told them kind of what they knew of the story of what had happened. And so I'm thinking in my mind how I could let her know that I was doing okay. And so I called her from Germany, and I said, honey, I got shot through both my thighs, and I lost my right hand. And the phone goes kind of quiet for a minute. And then I said, the good news is Junk's still there. And she realized at that point that I was doing okay, and it'd just be a matter of time for me to get home and recover. But that's the mission in a nutshell.
Okay, so I have a couple of follow-up questions. How many people were on that mission, including you?
Oh, that's a tough question. I'd say roughly 50, somewhere in the 35 to 50 neighborhood. And the only reason being is we were hitting multiple targets, and it was in rural Afghanistan, and there was compounds, probably at least a few hundred meters between compounds.
Where in Afghanistan? Did you say Kabul?
Paktia province.
Paktia, okay. Of that 35 to 50 or whatever that number is, how many made it out? I guess how many didn't?
One of our rangers was killed in action, and Specialist Gaither, who had come out of the two-story building, and I think he was attempting to come out and support us at the smaller building, and another enemy, which I had no knowledge of what was going on to my far right, but I guess there was some debris, some branches and stuff across the courtyard from them, and another enemy fighter popped up from there and shot him just below his helmet, and one of the guys next to him picked up the gun and shot the enemy, killed him, but we did lose Specialist Gaither that day.
Gaither, gotcha. Okay, so since you apparently sensitive missions like this were part of your job, in the movies you always see, the guy handing some other guy a letter for his wife, a last letter, if you will. Did you have one of those, or is that just all Hollywood bullshit?
No, I think some people do that, but it was my 7th deployment. I didn't ever think about that too much. I said goodbye to my family when I left the house, and we all knew the risks, but no, I never really thought about leaving a letter. It probably isn't a bad thing to have one of those, but it was just not my thing.
So you said that part of the Rangers, I guess, motto or whatever is to stay clean shaven?
Yeah, it's part of our Ranger standards.
Okay, so I have a question about that, because my neighbor is currently a Ranger, a Green Beret.
Yeah, well, that's the misconception that people get. There's a Ranger. A Ranger wears the Ranger scroll. Anybody in the Army can go to Ranger school. It's a school, leadership school designed by the Army, where you earn the Ranger tab. The Ranger tab is a school. Ranger scroll means that you're doing the Ranger thing as part of that's your career job in the Army. And so there's only 3 Ranger regiments, or there's 1 Ranger regiment and 3 Ranger battalions, 2 in Georgia and 1 in Fort Lewis, Washington. And so outside of that, I mean, there's people that, my cousin's a Ranger in Fort Campbell, or my friend's a Ranger in Fort Irwin. The only Rangers are the ones, actual Rangers are the ones in Georgia and Washington. All the other ones, they may be Ranger qualified or prior Rangers. Outside of that, they're not part of the Ranger regiment. I'm not taking anything away from them, but the standards that I talk about, we have it's called the Blue Book, and it's all the Ranger standards, what your uniforms should look like, down to everything. You will shave every single day, to include when you're on leave, holidays, weekends, and the intent is that you will maintain the Ranger appearance at all times.
Interesting, because that fella that I mentioned has shoulder-length hair and most of the time a full beard.
The Special Forces guys, they do that. There's special groups in the Rangers that are given relaxed grooming standards where they can grow beards and a little bit lengthier hair, but they're on special missions, so to speak.
You said that after you talked to your wife and you told her about your injuries, once you cracked that super rad joke, that she kind of knew you were okay. If I am correct, after you healed from those injuries, you went back. You re-enlisted or re-upped or whatever it's called.
Re-enlisted, yes. 5 more years. I had the opportunity to get out, and I weighed a lot of people's input, and majority of what I heard was most veterans say was that they regret not staying in, or they wish they could have stayed longer. And so I looked at it as I had the opportunity to stay longer, and I didn't want to live with regret. I'm not saying, well, I wonder what it would have been like if I would have stayed a little bit longer. And there was an opportunity to take a job where I could take care of wounded veterans or wounded military and special operations the way somebody, a liaison, took care of me and my family. through my recovery. And so it gave me a chance to do something to give back to what I was thankful for.
So I wash windows for a living, and my wife freaks out if she knows I'm going to be on a ladder higher than about 4 feet. So what was your wife's reaction when you told her that you were going to go back?
Oh, that was, at that point, she, I don't know, I think she trusted me because a few years before, she had told me that she didn't want me to re-enlist. And she says, "You've done enough deployments, it's time for you to get out." I went to work, and it happened to be my birthday, and I came home and opened the door, and she said, "Happy birthday." And I said, "Honey, guess what? I just re-enlisted for 6 years." And so she knew what it meant to me, and she knew that I made good decisions for the most part, and trusted me in the decision making. And I know that she probably didn't express it, but there was probably a little bit of fear. But you should have seen me this last Christmas. I was up on our rooftop. I took some rope and I tied what we call a Swiss seat, basically a rappelling seat out of rope. And then I tied it into a hook on the top of my roof on the 3rd floor and was putting up Christmas lights.
What is wrong with you, man? That's crazy.
See, I had the safety line. The thing is, I told my wife, I said, "If you see me dangling over the side, call the fire department." It means I'm out of rope. And I said, "I don't know if I can climb the rope with one hand."
Okay, so let's talk about your hand for a minute. I heard you in another interview explaining that your hand is pretty state-of-the-art and that you have some attachments that go with it?
Yes, it's called the iLim. It's by a company called Touch Bionics.
Did you say island?
iLim. Limb. The arm itself was fabricated down at the Center for Intrepid in San Antonio.
That's where I am.
On Fort Sam, yeah. And I was there for about 9 months. And the fingers move, kind of like a lot of people are like, "Oh man, it's like the Terminator, like Luke Skywalker." It doesn't have individual articulation, but all the fingers move, and each finger stops when it meets a certain amount of resistance, so that you have more dexterity to grab different shapes. It also has a full 360 left and right rotation, and then when you twist the hand to the right or left enough, it'll come off, and you can put on different attachments. I have open-end wrenches, vice grips, full set of cutlery knives, a golf attachment. I just got a potato pillar, a pizza cutter. I have a bow release. I have a workout arm, you name it. There's so many different attachments. Our military is doing a better job taking care of its wounded than they ever have. The intent is that if you did something before or you want to do something, that they'll do their best to find a way to make it happen for you.
I heard that you have a fishing rod attachment.
No, they have a fishing rod attachment. I didn't get it. I really haven't fished. I think I've fished twice since I lost my hand, and so it's one of those things that I almost don't have the time to do it anymore. Eventually, one day, if I get older and have the time, I might end up picking it up again. But right now in my life, I'm not one of those guys that all the attachments that I have, I use. I don't have them on display just to, hey, look at all the things I have. All the things I have, I use. The things I don't use, attachments that I was given that I tried out or that I didn't end up saying, this isn't really for me. I ended up donating them back to Prostis there in San Antonio and told them that if there's people in the local community that can't afford it, they can have those ones.
That's awesome, dude. Man, you should have stopped by when you were here in San Antonio. Just kidding.
I was all over that place. I tried every barbecue place in San Antonio.
What'd you think?
Texas Pride was the best. It's actually in Atkins, Texas.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah.
My wife and I were watching Guy Fieri's Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives one Sunday morning, and he had stopped by there, and so that was the focus, or one of the focuses of that episode. And we just looked at each other, and we were like, what are we doing today? Let's go there. So we went and checked it out. I'm glad you liked it.
There's a small group of special ops guys while I was there that were injured, and when one of us would leave the hospital, we'd all get together for a dinner and kind of farewell that person back to their unit or wherever they were going, and we ended up going to that pizza place, the one with like the 42-pound pizza or whatever it is. Big Lou's, I think.
Oh yeah, Big Lou's or
I don't know if
something.
you've
Yeah,
been.
something like that. Yeah.
We ordered the second to the largest pizza between like 8 of us, and we couldn't finish it.
Nice. Well, San Antonio was, I think, number 2 for fattest cities for like a decade. So then now you know why.
And I do get down there every so often. I love San Antonio. I was just there for the Army All-American Bowl, and I had gone to that a couple of years. I ended up going down there one time. They honored me, and I was the Grand Marshal of the Fiesta's River Parade.
That Army Ball, is that why you were here when my wife met you?
Yeah, I was actually very excited because I had gone probably 4 years ago, and I did not know that at the time that I was going to be taking the game ball out to the 50-yard line with the oldest living veteran, who at that time was 107. And I'm sitting next to him on the bench, and we're getting ready to take this game ball out. And I looked at him and I said, sir, I just read an article on you a month ago. And I said, it in the article, it says you attributed your health and age to cigar smoking and wine drinking, or whiskey drinking. And he kind of leaned over and whispered to me, he goes, I didn't think they were going to take me seriously. And I was surprised. He walked out to the 50-yard line by himself, unassisted, and right back. And I was actually really excited because I heard he was going to be there again this year. He's 112, and he lives, I think he lives just north of there in Austin. And
Wow.
The day of, I showed up, and they said he wasn't going to make it, that he wasn't feeling well. And I said, understandable, he's 112.
Wow.
Yeah, I got to take the game ball out with Pete Dawkins, and I had met him a few years prior at the Army-Navy game, and we had done an interview. It was him, myself, and Roger Starbuck. To have those two guys next to me in an interview, I felt like, wow, it was pretty amazing.
I bet those dudes looked at you and felt like, wow.
I tell you, what impresses me, though, is a lot of people that I meet, and I get to meet a lot of celebrities and wealthy people and executives, and what really impresses me, though, is with all these athletes and stuff, is that I'm not only impressed by what they do or what they've achieved, but what they do after their achievements. And that's what leaves a big impression on me, is the person they become after the fact. And so you could attain all this wealth and all this celebrity status, but what you do with it is what really makes a difference to me.
That makes sense. I think one of the biggest local former athlete celebrity heroes or whatever is David Robinson, the former Spur.
Oh, yeah, I met him before. I met him a couple times. I tell you, he raised his boys right there. He's got some good boys there.
Well, from all accounts, I've never met him, but from all accounts and everything I've seen and heard about that guy, he is salt of the earth. He preaches at the local church sometimes on Sundays. He used his wealth and his fame, I guess, to create a school for underprivileged children. Like, the guy's just salt of the earth. Super good dude, from what I've heard.
You were mentioning David Robinson. Are you a Spurs fan?
I would like to say that I'm a huge Spurs fan. I've been born and raised in San Antonio my whole life, and that's our only professional sports team because soccer doesn't count.
They are huge on soccer up here.
Gross. So the Spurs came to San Antonio right around the time that I was born. So I kind of feel like we came to San Antonio at the same time. So yeah, I feel like I'm a big Spurs fan. Why? Why? What do you have to say?
Well, I love the Spurs. They're a great team, and they've been a great team for a number of years now. But Popovich, prior service veteran, and a lot of the players would come and visit the troops in the hospital on a regular basis. I think it helped them be well-rounded players and realize that, hey, we got to do this for a living because there's other people doing that. And not to mention the tickets. They give a lot of tickets to a lot of the wounded veterans. And, Peter Holt, the owner of the Spurs, Viet Nam veteran, also owner of Caterpillar. They do a heck of a lot to support the veterans and the military of the local community there. In my impression, like I said, what people do with it, that's why I love the Spurs, and they're a pretty good team too.
Well, I agree. Next time you're in San Antonio, if you give me enough notice, I'll get tickets and I will take you to a game, sir.
I appreciate it.
If you ever find yourself in San Antonio and have some time to kill, I would be honored to escort you to the Chester A. Nimitz Pacific War Museum in Fredericksburg, which is about 45 minutes from my house. I would absolutely love to take you there. And, you know, I've got a decent-sized house with extra rooms. You can even stay here if you want to, man.
I appreciate that very much.
I was listening to your retirement ceremony. There is some podcast that I guess they uploaded the entire audio file of your retirement ceremony. So I had a couple of questions about that. I'm assuming that it was taking place in Seattle or thereabouts.
Actually, it took place on Fort Lewis here. It was in an old theater right next to my unit.
Okay. First of all, why was Howard Schultz the CEO of Starbucks? Why was he there?
So I invited him. This is going to turn into a little bit of a story. I had gone to Starbucks. I had been invited by some of their veterans a few years back. Starbucks got a bad name with the military early on in the war. I think a young Marine sergeant wrote to Starbucks during, I think it was like '03 or so, and said, "Hey, Starbucks, send us free coffee." And being a company, they replied, they said, "Hey, we can't outfit the whole military with free coffee." They turned around and, "Oh, Starbucks hates the troops. They don't support the troops, da-da-da." And Starbucks ended up turning around and saying, "Hey, you buy a bag, we'll give a bag in their stores." Living like 40 miles south, I figured, well, I want to go see for myself, see what Starbucks is really about and their support for veterans. So I said, it's only 40 miles away. I drove up there, went to the headquarters and met the guys, all the veterans. They told me, you want to take a tour? And they started walking me around the building, and they actually had a monument built inside the building, a tribute to the troops, to a lot of veterans and those that were deployed, that were serving, and that were employees of Starbucks. And so I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. It is actually pretty impressive. And as we keep walking around, they said, "Hey, do you want to meet Howard Schultz?" And I said, "Sure." I'm thinking we're going to go shake hands, say hi, and then keep moving on. And got to meet him. He welcomed me into his office. And we sat down and we talked for quite a while. It ended up turning out that he said, "I don't want you to only talk to my veterans. I'd love for you to talk to my whole company." And so it ended up getting networked into all the Starbucks. Howard Schultz addressed the company, and then I got to talk to the company. About 6 months later, he invited me back and said, "Hey, I'd love for you to come to this breakfast. We're having a big announcement. I think you'd love it." And so I went up there, and they were announcing that they were hiring 10,000 veterans and spouses. Awesome. And so a few months go by, I get another message from Howard Schultz saying, "Hey, I am putting a small get-together at my house. Love for you to come by, say a few remarks." So I go up there. I sit all day at the shareholders meeting, go to his house that evening, and a small group of people are there. Oprah Winfrey, Bobby Knight, Senator Gifford and her husband, and the old Secretary of Defense, Gates, just an array of people. And about an hour and a half later, we go out into a tent in his backyard, and it's later in the evening, and he gets up there with his wife, and he says, "I'd love to announce that the Schultz Family Foundation is contributing," I forget the exact amount, but it was millions of dollars toward helping our veterans, TBI, PTSD, that kind of thing. And I think the intent was to these other people with deep pockets to jump on board. And I got up there, did my 5-minute little talk, and I had to go home because we were moving homes at the time. A few months later down the road, he sends me a note again and says, "Hey, I'm writing a book. I have a co-author that's working on this with me. Would you mind if we put your story in this book?" And I said, "Sure." So then the book, they said, is going to be coming out on Veterans Day that year. He ends up saying we're doing a concert in D.C. called the Concert for Valor. We're teaming up with HBO, and it's going to have some of the stories as vignettes during the concerts to show on the big screens. We'd love to have you and your family come out. And the book ended up getting released that same day and in all the Starbucks worldwide. And this concert ran from the Capitol to the Washington Monument. It was ridiculous. They had these jumbotrons all the way down, and it was free to all veterans and public, and it was amazing. They had so many big names there. We met a lot of the presenters that were introducing the bands and stuff, and we were staying at the same hotel. Jack Black, Jamie Foxx, Metallica was there, Eminem, you name it. They had all these different bands that were just big at that time that were just amazing performances. And in between, they would show vignettes of these stories that were in the book. A lot of great stories, but he ended up sending me a copy of the book that him and Rajiv, the other author, had signed. And Howard wrote to it in it saying, Leroy, thank you for putting us on this journey, and Howard Schultz. And so I figured, been around him quite a bit, maybe send him an invite to my retirement. And I was actually shocked that he came, and he spent a good portion of the afternoon at my retirement. But it really made me realize, though, I mean, I was so impressed at how much he had done in just that short 1.5, 2 year span. I was just like, wow. And reading the book, it talks about his dad serving in World War II and not really knowing what his dad did. A lot of my buddies will ask me, well, did he give you a Starbucks card for the rest of your life? I said, no, I don't really care. I said, he's given so much to the veterans and our communities that I don't want anything from him. I think he has given enough. He still continues to support the veterans, and I'll get a note from some of the guys up there every now and then, and they'll shoot me a, hey, thank you. You got us started on the right path, and our veterans are really doing well up here. And that, for me, is an unknown story. Not a lot of people know about it, and I don't mind that. For me, that's the success story right there, is that it's continuing to benefit our veterans and impact a lot of people out there.
It sounds like you are super, super duper all about the military. How old were you when you decided you wanted to be in the military?
About 7 or 8.
I'm laughing because when I'm 7 or 8, like, I'm playing in a pile of fire ants and eating mud, and you're deciding that you're going to protect me so that I can do that.
It got into my head at a young age. Back then, we used to have the tube televisions, and the teacher would wheel a cart with a tube television into your classroom. She'd turn on the television, and we'd watch the news. And that was kind of where we got our current events for part of our history class. The thing that was going on at that time was Desert Storm or SHIELD. I can't remember which one, but my mom's cousin was deployed. And that really started getting my gears turning because the family was all talking about him being deployed. I started asking questions. Well, why is he over there fighting for those people? Not realizing that he was not only over there fighting for them, he was over there fighting for us and risking his life for that. And the thing that I realized too is after going to both my grandparents served in the military, and as you walk into their homes, you see their picture in uniform in their living room with family pictures. And it really dawned on me, they never talked about their service, but they wanted everyone that they welcomed into their home, into the first room, to see that picture. And it was something they were proud of. And so at a young age, I started realizing that I may not make a career out of it, but I wanted to serve. And so I went in with that initial thought that, hey, this might only be 4 years. And it turned into so much more. And I realized the difference that I was making. I tell a lot of people, I joined prior to 9/11. There was no foreseeable war in the future at that time. But I didn't join to go to war. I joined to make a difference to the people to the right and left of me and to the people back home if I had to deploy. And so that really is what became my inspiration to join the military.
Well, you remember how we started this off by talking about how you met my wife at the airport?
Yep.
She was actually in the Navy. She was deployed when it turned from Desert Shield to Desert Storm.
Oh, wow.
So she was out there back then when you were deciding that you were going to do this.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Well, you take another significant time like that. I was actually getting ready to go to Ranger School. I was in what we call pre-Ranger down in Fort Benning. And we were out in the field at this place called Cole Range where they do a lot of pre-Ranger training. Out in the field, they had one little shack where the cadre would hang out, and we were out there doing our drills and getting scuffed up and whatnot. And next thing we know, we hear something about everyone starts surrounding this cadre little shack, and inside they had I don't know if they had a TV or radio or what, but it was 9/11, and they were telling us little bits and pieces of what was going on, and we kept asking to know more. And guy came out and he started yelling at us to get back to training. He goes, you guys are probably going to war soon. Now get out there and keep training. And little did he know how right he was.
Shit. I was test driving a used car right then when all that happened.
It's kind of like JFK. Everybody knows where they were at that point in life. You look at the kids that are joining the military right now. Shoot, most of them were not even a year old.
You are correct. And I feel like we're still fighting the same war.
And we are, but I'll tell you, I just came back from Afghanistan in December, and a lot has changed.
How so?
A lot of the Afghans were doing exactly what we talked about. We're letting the Afghans start taking the fight to them. We're better preparing the Afghans to fight. We're supporting them. We're still doing a little bit of operations, not much, but the Afghans are taking a lot of casualties. It's unfortunate, but it's needed. They need to start fighting for their own country just as much. And what's surprising is the way the Taliban and Al-Qaeda were able to hold on to that country for so long in control of it was they kept the country population ignorant. Most of them had less than a second grade level education when we first got there. And now seeing women in parliament there, seeing the schools being built, seeing the hard paved roads that are built, it's phenomenal. The towns that have electricity. One of the most shocking things to me was when I was there 2 trips ago, we're flying out of Kabul at night in the Black Hawk, and I look down and I see all these neon lights which look like clubs and tons of people in the street. I'm going, wow, they're actually living a somewhat normal life. And for me, that was the impact that kept me deploying, was seeing the positive role that we played while we were over there. And having civilians come up and say, we love Americans. We wish you guys would stay here forever. And I say, we love to also, but we have families to get back to, and we're here to help you stand on your 2 feet so that you can defend yourselves and live happy lives. And so it's really different when you get to see not only the bad side of it, but positive side. I got to wrap up here in about 5 minutes. I got to go pick up my son.
Dude, no worries. You have already given me more time than I deserve. So, I hear there's a statue in honor of you. Where is it?
Santa Fe, New Mexico, my hometown. It's about an 8-foot statue. It's intricate detail. It's right downtown in front of City Hall. And it's pretty unreal. I did a tandem skydive into the unveiling.
What the shit?
At the unveiling, I kind of told the community there that nobody really wants a statue of themselves while they're living. But growing up there and knowing the poverty that's around there and the kids that don't finish high school, it doesn't matter who the statue is of, but what it represents. It'll do great things for those that come in contact with it. And so it's a statue of inspiration for others. The artist, great guy. He was the governor of the pueblo just north of Santa Fe. He approached my dad about the idea, and my dad said, I don't know, I'll talk to my son, but he said, how much does one of those things cost? And he said about $250,000. And my dad said, well, I don't know where we're going to find that money. And he goes, don't worry about it. I already talked to my tribe, and the casino is going to cover the cost. And so Puake, Pueblo, they're the ones that paid for it. And City Hall donated the land to place it on. But what he also did was he made 2-foot statues, replicas. And I believe he was selling them for $15,000. And he gave one to my father, and he gave one to me.
That's the most amazing thing I've ever heard in my life. That is fucking fantastic. So I listened to your retirement ceremony, and during that ceremony, you got sort of awarded a couple of awards, but your wife, Ashley, got awarded some awards as well for her contributions and support. I was already crying after hearing your awards and your story, and then I completely lost my shit when your wife got these awards. So what did that mean to you?
I was happy because I think she got more than I did. Deservingly so. A lot of people don't realize it, but our families sacrifice more than we do. We get to go to a job where we get to work out and hang out with guys, BS, and have a good time and shoot bullets and blow things up. And a lot of times, even when we're home and out training, our families are at home while we're out there in the field at night. And when we're deployed, they're the ones that have to worry about the bills being paid, the kids going to school, the kids going to basketball practice, soccer practice, dentist, you name it. And they have a lot more to worry about than what we do. It's easy to say, well, you guys take the potential of getting killed. Well, they're the ones that every night go to sleep them wake up and think about the possibility of us getting killed as well and not coming home and having to live there the rest of their lives without us. And so the sacrifice in a whole comes from the families, and not only the wives and husbands and children, but the parents, the family members. And the sad part is any loss is a significant loss, because it's not only felt by the immediate family, it's felt by anyone who's ever come into contact with that individual, and even those who may have not, that just know the story. And so that was a great moment that I was happy that they were able to do for her and the family.
I think it was really amazing that the military really respected and honored the sacrifice and the just amazingness that your wife and your children, I could not believe it. I was very, it threw me for a loop because I didn't see it coming. Okay, so I'm going to let you go. But before that, I want you to tell everybody where they can find you on the various social medias. Pretty please?
Absolutely. There is a lot of fake ones out there.
There really are. And so a friend of mine was asking me if I'm following you on Instagram, and I said no, because there's so many that appear to be him. I'm not really sure which one is him. So on Instagram, you are...
just Leroy Petry, and it got a picture of my dog. I'm still learning Instagram. My son's still teaching me about it. I have 2 posts, 911 followers. And I think it's funny because I think those 2 posts that I have is my son eating sushi and a picture of my flag in my backyard. On Twitter, it's just at Leroy Petry, and it's a picture of me standing next to our memorial at my unit. My Facebook is just Leroy Petry in a truck I had about 8 years ago, a Toyota Tacoma. The unfortunate part about my Facebook, I found this out about a year ago, is that you're limited to how many friend requests you can accept. I reached 5,000 a couple of years ago, and they said, nope, can't have any more friends. I guess you have to create a fan page or something like that.
Something like that. I feel like you should reach out to Facebook and or Mark Zuckerberg, because there's no way 5,000 is a limit. You should reach out, and if you don't, I will.
And I've reached out to Twitter. I keep trying to get them to verify me so I can get that little blue check mark. And I don't know how to go about doing that. I tried the way they say, but still waiting for them to give me a little blue check mark.
I will focus all of my attention on getting you that blue check mark.
I would love that. That would be awesome.
Thank you so very, very much. Is there a fund where people can donate money to either support your challenge coin addiction or a fund that you're super into? Is there a place where people can go?
One of the best organizations I found out there that helps take care of our wounded veterans and our active duty is an organization called David Fairdy's Troops First Foundation.
And that is where you prefer that people go to throw money?
Absolutely. Throw as much as you can that way. It's a great organization that does a lot of meaningful stuff. I'll tell you a few of their initiatives that they have. One is called Operation Proper Exit, which is a great thing that they do where they take veterans, combat wounded veterans that have served overseas, and take them back into the country, into theater, to visit the troops, to visit the hospitals where they were treated, to visit the commands. And at the end of the trip, they get to leave the country on a normal aircraft, not a medevac aircraft. And it has been going on. It'll be trip number 24 coming up, and over 125 troops or so have gone back downrange after their recoveries, paraplegics, amputees, you name it. Another one of their initiatives is a thing called Operation Warrior Call, which I am actually a spokesman for. And what we noticed, we went to a convention put on by the DOD and the VA for suicide there in Dallas a few years back, and realized that we have every resource under the sun to help these veterans and these military folks that are committing suicide. The problem is we're not reaching the ones that aren't raising their hands or walking into these facilities. They're the ones that are isolated that we need to find. And we found the only way we're going to find them is if we start an initiative called Operation Warrior Call, where we ask everyone to basically take an oath to say, I will call at least one person I know that has served or is serving in the military once a week minimum to check on their welfare and just see how they're doing and or visit them, and that's the way we're going to find those people that are isolating themselves and having difficult times and get them the help they need, and be honest. And another initiative they have is service dogs. They do some of the finest service dogs I've seen out there for a lot of our wounded veterans. And besides that, they also do another thing. They do different outings, hunting and golfing, and we just cut the ribbon on last year in June near Bethesda Naval Hospital, the new Walter Reed, whatever. They have a cul-de-sac of 7 homes that were built that are called the Petry Honor Village, and the main road down the center is called Chief Chris Kyle Court, and it is a village designed as transitional housing for wounded veterans in the area that will have ongoing treatment, and it gives them a place to stay rent-free for up to 2 years. And the intent is that they're progressing on with their lives and that they'll pay utilities, but it's similar to a Fisher House, except it's not like a hotel environment. It actually gives you a home to live in and neighbors that are going through similar situations as yourself, and it turns out to be kind of a great support group as well. And so those are some of the initiatives that are going on. There's a few more, but we're actually, I'm meeting with them next week, and we're going to plan out this year's events and this year's support for our troops and our veterans. This is overwhelming for me. I mean, you talk about all the things that are done in my honor. I mean, here in my town, they have the main street named after me and a plaque down at City Hall, and too much. I mean, it's too much, but the same way I look at it, though, is it's not for me. It may have my name on it, but it's not for me. It's for everyone that comes across it and sees it, and hopefully it inspires them to do more.
Well, here's the thing, Master Sergeant Retired Petry. It is for you. It is also for everybody who didn't survive. You represent everybody who made it and didn't make it. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank your wife for putting us in touch as well, and for her service.
She is the most excited that she met you. She's met some really cool people, but she tells everybody about when she met you. I'm going to let you go. I will hit you up when this comes out so you can tell everybody. I'm indebted to you forever.
You too.
You have my phone number. Goodbye.
All right, take care. Bye.
Admiral McRaven will present the Legion of Merit. Attention to orders. This is to certify that the President of the United States of America has awarded the Legion of Merit to Master Sergeant Leroy A. Petry for exceptionally meritorious service in multiple positions of increasing responsibility and authority, culminating as the Wounded Warrior Advisor. Master Sergeant Petry's professionalism, leadership, and commitment to excellence will have a lasting impact on those with whom he has served. His outstanding efforts are in keeping with the finest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, the 75th Ranger Regiment, the United States Army Special Operations Command, and the United States Army. The Order of St. Maurice recognizes individuals who have contributed significantly to the infantry in ways that stand out in the eyes of the recipient seniors, subordinates, and peers. These individuals have also demonstrated the highest standards of integrity and moral character, an outstanding degree of professional competence, and have served the United States infantry or the infantry community with distinction. Appearing before a most judicious and discriminating committee of tried and proven Army infantrymen and infantry patriots, be it known that Master Sergeant Leroy A. Petry was tested and found worthy of special recognition for outstanding contributions to the community of the Army Infantry, and is hereby inducted into the Honorable Order of St. Maurice for outstanding contributions to the infantry. St. Maurice is the embodiment of courage, justice, commitment to principle, leadership, and gallantry. So too, the aforementioned individual embodies these qualities and represents excellence in the infantry. Therefore, the Chief of Infantry and the President of the National Infantry Association acknowledge that this patriot is due special honor and respect for now and posterity. The Commander's Award for Public Service is hereby awarded to Mrs. Ashley Petry for exceptionally meritorious service in support of the 75th Ranger Regiment from May 2008 to July 2014. Mrs. Ashley Petry devoted countless personal hours and resources as a mentor and spokesperson for wounded warriors. Her personal example of strength and character directly impacted wounded service members and their families. Mrs. Ashley Petry's exceptional service is consistent with the highest traditions of civilian service and reflects distinct credit upon her, the 75th Ranger Regiment, and the United States Army. Admiral McRaven will now present Mrs. Petry with the Shield of Sparta, Heroine of Infantry. This recognizes individuals who have contributed significantly to the promotion of the infantry and the families of infantrymen in ways that stand out in the eyes of the recipient's peers. The National Infantry Association hereby recognizes Ashley Petry with the award of the Shield of Sparta, Heroine of Infantry, for having served the infantry community with distinction for having demonstrated a conspicuous contribution to the infantry family and community, for representing the highest standards of integrity, moral character, professional competence, and for demonstrating a volunteer and supportive spirit. Appearing before a most arduous and discriminating committee of tried and proven Army infantrymen and infantry patriots, be it known that Ashley Petry was found worthy of special recognition for outstanding contributions to the community of Army infantry and is hereby awarded the Shield of Sparta, Heroine of Infantry.
Recognize that I volunteered as a Ranger, fully known as my chosen profession, always and never hold prestige, honor, and high spirit for my Ranger regiment, acknowledging the fact that the Ranger is a moral elite soldier who rises to the cutting edge of battle by land, sea, or air. I accept the fact that as a Ranger, my country expects me to move further, faster, fight harder than any other soldier. Never shall I fail my comrades. I always keep myself mentally alert, physically strong, and morally straight. I will shoulder more than my share of the task, whatever it may be, 100%, and then some. Yeah, will I show the world that I'm a specially selected, well-trained soldier. My courtesy, superior officers, neatness of dress, care of equipment, shall set the example for others to follow. Energetically, I meet the enemies of my country. I shall defeat them on the field of battle, where I'm better trained, and will fight with all my might. Surrender is not a Ranger word. I'll never leave a fallen comrade, fall in the hands of the enemy, and under no circumstances will I ever embarrass my country. Ready to lie display, the intestinal fortitude required, to fight on the Ranger objective, and complete the mission, though I be the lone survivor. Rangers lead the way!
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony.
Thank you all for attending this extraordinary ceremony for this extraordinary hero.
We can march all pretty in a row, every man in line. All be dressed up, spit shiny shoes, as glossy as our new dime. But smile and pray that you never see me when I'm portraying high. Orders I am, and I must take your life because I'm the warrior, the destroyer, and I won't warn you if I must take your life. So smile and pray that you never see me when I'm portraying high. Orders I am, and I must take your life. You won't see me as I slip up to take your life, and you won't hear me, for I